This is your first feature film directing?
It's my second, but my first that anyone has seen.
Oh, okay, okay.
I mean, my first one people did see, but it was much smaller.
So, but can you explain the difference between editing and directing?
Yeah, the great thing about editing is that it really fulfills my desire to be a filmmaker without having to wear the director's cap, so to speak. I don't have to make all of the really hard decisions. But the really great thing about it is that because someone else is directing, I'm sort of subjugating my own ideas and my own perspectives to a certain degree and trying to step into their head. So I'm doing all the things I would do if I were directing a film, which is trying to tell a story and try to use cinematic language to tell that story and to tell the story in the most efficient and effective way possible. But I'm using someone else's perspective and I'm stepping into their shoes, so to speak, to try to do it. And that is, I think, the biggest difference. I'm setting aside my own directorial vision, so to speak, but I'm not setting aside my, integrity as a filmmaker or my ideals as a filmmaker. My hope is always that the filmmaker who I'm working for is hiring me to do that. So that is, I think, the biggest difference. And then, of course, there's also the fact that I'm only there at the end for the most part. I'm never, right in the thick of it while they're shooting. I'm not the one having to tell the actors what to do. I get to sort of come in at the end and, see what's been wrought from the production itself.
So the couple in your movie is sort of Bonnie and Clyde couple. Mm-hmm. What is it that is so appealing with criminal couples, you think?
I think it's just the idea of freedom, of doing what you want and doing it in the way you want and making, your own rules, especially when you put it in the context of a relationship, when you feel like you are the center of the world, you and your partner are the center of the world and everything is revolving around you and you can get away with anything. You sort of are having this rush of adrenaline that love and romance provides, and I think that lends itself to a sort of outlaw mentality in some ways. And so I think that the reason film history is so full of criminal couples on the run is because falling in love and being with someone is sort of it's something you have to get away with. There's some sort of illegal, illicit rush to that I think goes hand in hand with actual, literal, illegal and illicit behavior. So all those classic tales of Bonnie and Clyde or Badlands, where the romance is heightened by the adrenaline of doing something wrong, of doing something that's forbidden. I mean, that goes all the way back to Romeo and Juliet. The hidden affair, and so you're just taking it to the next level and making that forbidden aspect quite literal by including illegal activity.
So your movie is sort of reminding about the new Hollywood during the 70s. Do you think American movies were better before?
I don't think they were better. I think they're just as good now, and in many cases they're better now. But I think that there was an idealism that was crystallized in that period of time, not just in terms of the filmmakers, but in the construct with which they were able to make their films. It's, I think, the only time in history where Hollywood was really taken over by independent visions, and the studio system was putting out movies that they have never put out since and probably never will again. So in the long run, I think the movies now are better than ever. I think great movies are being made all the time and more great movies are being made. But in that brief moment in the 70s when the studio system was overrun by these auteurs, that was a moment where commerce and art sort of had a coincision that was probably one of a kind and will never really happen again.
So, is it important for you when a movie takes place in the story? Because in This Body Saints, it's back then. It's a time.
Mm-hmm. It's timeless.
Yeah.
It is very important to me when a movie takes place, but I don't think it has to specifically have a year that it takes place. And the fact that this film doesn't take place in a specific year is very important to me. And that was something that was a major creative decision, both on my part and everyone else that worked in the film, that we were going to create this sort of pastiche of old time periods, a pastiche of antiquity, so to speak. But that is in and itself important, and I think that, you know, the decision of when to set a film and whether or not to make that part of the story is an important creative decision. There are films I'm working on now where the script I'm writing right now takes place in the 80s, and it has a very specific 1980s feel to it, and that's an important part of the story. And another piece I'm working on takes place now, and the fact that it's taking place now, you know, I have to consider whether or not I'm going to make it a contemporary movie in that it's reflecting of the times, or if I'm going to set that aside. All those things are things that come into play. So whether or not you make a specific contextual piece that's reflecting of a certain time period, or whether you're avoiding that, I think those are all very crucial decisions you have to make as you set out to tell that story.
So the vision you had before you started producing this movie, directing this movie, working with it, is it, and now when it's done, is it as you expected it would be?
It's different in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways it's the same. I think that when I look at it on a scene-by-scene basis, it feels very different, and it feels like it evolved. But when I think about the movie as a whole, what my initial goals were, and when I think about it in abstract terms like tone and feeling, it's very close to exactly what I had initially envisioned. I initially envisioned something that felt a certain way. It didn't necessarily look a certain way, but it felt a certain way, and I think I captured that feeling quite thoroughly. But one of the things that's important to me when I write a script and set out to make a film is that I leave it open to change and leave it open to shift as the production takes place and as we shoot it and as the actors play the characters. I want everyone to feel free to elaborate on what's on the page. I don't want anyone to be bound by the script, and we're not trying to make a direct facsimile of the script on film. So I think that all of the changes that happened were for the betterment of the film, and I think that it improved, and I think that it changed in a way that was better than any of us could have predicted. But it's certainly, when I look at what I initially set out to do and what we actually have, there are lots of surprises that happened along the way that pushed us in different directions.
Can you tell us about one of the surprises or something?
I think one of them is that I didn't think the movie was going to be a love story, and it wound up being quite romantic and almost a quintessential love story. And that was something that didn't come out until halfway through the shoot, when we started filming Casey and Rooney together for the first time. Up until that point, the romance was certainly a part of it, but it was not really the central focus of the film. But once we saw the two of them together and saw the chemistry they had, that really galvanized everything that had happened up until that point and everything that we shot after that point. And the movie all of a sudden became much more of a tragic love story than we'd ever anticipated. And once we started editing the movie, we began to shift gears and trying to to let that become an accent of the entire film, and let that be the through line that we followed through to the end. And that was something I would never have guessed from the script, that that's what would be so predominant in the film. But it was one of those things that just reared up its head and presented itself, and we ran after it.
So you mentioned that you wanted to communicate a certain feeling with the movie. What kind of feeling was it when you started?
I haven't figured out what the best word to describe it is. There's some sort of a melancholy is one word, nostalgia is a word, something that is bittersweet, but I can't really figure out what exactly it is that feeling could be summed up as. And that's one of the things that I have difficulty with as a filmmaker, is that very often I'm after something that is very abstract, and I can't describe it. I only know it when we find it. And so I can't tell all of my collaborators at the beginning of the film that we are going to try to make a film that feels like this, because I don't know what this is yet. And I still don't. I only know once I'm feeling the right feeling that we've got what it is that we were after. And that is something that makes it difficult. It makes it hard to explain to people what we're doing. and it makes it, you know, everybody just has to sort of trust that I know what I want and that I'll know it when I see it, and then we just start working and hopefully get there. And so now that the movie is done and I look at it, I still don't know exactly what that word is that would describe that feeling, but I know that when I sit down and watch the movie, I feel the things I wanted to feel, and I know that it worked. So that is as far as I've gotten in figuring out what I'm doing here. I'm fumbling in the dark a lot of the times.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.